Hey everyone, PJ here. So today, this episode is going to be a little bit different. It was supposed to be the second half of Here to Slay of that review, but this discussion went a little long, so we decided to make it its own episode. So I'm joined by Dan and Jack as we talk about the state of E3 and gaming in general, video games and board games, and where we think it's headed and all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah, it's pretty freeform, something a little different. So let us know what you think about it. Yeah, hope you enjoy it. So, yeah, we talked about it in our Here to Slay video that I want to have a conversation about just the state of gaming in general, because E3 has been canceled.
Yep.
Due to, quote, lack of interest.
And that surprises me just in the way that they canceled it, but not when you think about the way that gaming has been going for the past 10 years. A lot of games you can see have been going towards like mobile gaming. Like a lot of the big companies. Well, for example, today I found Doom. I was like, oh yeah, I like Doom. And all right, let's take a look at this. What's on the phone? Oh, it's one of those. You just move the character around. Everything else takes care of it. So I was like, well, that's stupid.
Yeah.
I was going to say, actually, I was looking up actual numbers because I have a theory and I wanted to check the numbers before I said anything. And I'm actually pretty close with what I was thinking. One, when E3 said that it was a lack of interest, it wasn't necessarily a lack of interest. It was a lack of corporate interest because Sony, especially Sony and Nintendo, learned in the last few years that they don't need E3. They don't need these big press shows. Mm-hmm. Nintendo has the best system, if you ask me, where they have these tree houses. Or they just like, oh, hey, a week before they tell people on Twitter, hey, beware on this date at this time. And they drop usually about a 45-ish minute presentation. And it's next couple of months kind of games are coming out. And hey, something that's similar, a little bit further out. And Sony started doing the same thing. They have their own event.
Mm-hmm. And Microsoft has been doing their own event.
Yep.
But, yeah, and so, like, that is something that I had written down, too, is, like, to me, like, it just... like, yeah, I get it saves a lot of money, but it also feels just so lazy, which is so common in the video game industry right now.
It is, but also take a look at how this thing started. When you really want to think about it, this all started with Nintendo, because if you remember a few years ago, they brought out some stuff at E3 and it just bombed because they weren't ready. Now they've taken that into their own hands where they don't have to go and set up a booth. They don't have to do this.
They were the first ones to back out
exactly.
years
they
ago.
They were the first ones to back out, but they also were the first ones to go, well, we've got all of this social media. We can start doing this. Sony follows suit, but Sony doesn't have to do anything because they have the PlayStation. They got the video game market. They've got music, Sony Music, BMG. They've got Sony Pictures, TriStar in Columbia. They've got all of these avenues where they go, we don't need it. Like, did you see the trailer for the new Spider-Verse film? After the trailer, it was a PlayStation 5 ad.
Well, because my other thing is that, yes, actually, in my numbers, I'm going to bring that up, is yes and no. Like, because Nintendo realized that rather than rush to get something that's not quite right for E3 in the middle, in the beginning of June, they can say, okay, we can wait until October when it's actually where we want it to be and drop it.
Right. And that's smart thinking.
Yes. And the other thing is that it's actually an economic system, right? It's an economic shift. And I've noticed this, and so I actually look up the numbers because I have my theory, is that board games are a microcosm of where video games were about 15-ish years ago, 20 years ago, we were in high school. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that at that time was, the terminus of the PS2 and Xbox era, getting into 360 and PS3.
Yeah.
You had a near you had this huge jump year over year of increase, revenue increase is how it's called. The numbers were around like 14-15% year over year for like a 4-year period. And what had happened is because there was a huge revenue jump, a lot of things happening in short order. One, venture capitalists that, for lack of a better word, were normies, had nothing to do with the video game industry. Like, oh, hey, there's money to be made here. Let's start funneling money. And that's where it's also the downfall of individual creativity. That's where you start getting a lot of games that are very samey, very set up. So, and the other thing that happened is the media problem, which was that originally, if any of us wanted to get information on video games at the time, we had a few options: Tech TV and G4, magazines, or a few, precious few, because it was honestly early internet, like forums.
Yep.
So all the media we were getting was by fans for fans. And as money got more and more, and you got more venture capitalists, you also started getting, for lack of a better word, corporate groups saying, yeah, literally like, the New York Times had someone reviewing video games in their thing. And I'm like, that is not the person I want to go to for video games.
Yeah.
That reviewer might be a fan of video games, but he's at the New York Times. That is not who I'm looking for. And what's happened is that I'll actually go into the numbers for the US, because I actually looked this all up. Video games are not dying anytime soon.
No.
The economic, right now, the US domestic of video games is in the region of
I have it here too.
$184.4 billion last year, out of a worldwide total of 457 and some odd billion. Now, a lot of that is mobile, something like 56 and some billion dollars mobile, and mobile is about 50% of the gaming industry worldwide. That's another problem that we had, is like this infusion of mobiles.
Ugh.
And they actually have projections of what video game growth is going to look like, and they're looking at somewhere between 8 and 9% growth year over year for the next about 5 years. Now, tabletop games, they are fairly small right now. For everything included, like things that are more digital only, and also physical games and stuff like that, and game equipment, the numbers I was getting are in the area of $19 billion annually last year.
Yep, that's what I found too.
And they're looking at, by 2028, this growth, they're looking at, I've seen numbers floating between 31 billion and 40 billion. That is a huge amount of growth in a few short years.
Yeah. I was looking at, in 2021, typical board game revenue was like 2.86 billion, and then it's just been doubling. Like every year. It's just like building very quickly, as you said. And so, and a large portion of that is in the US, whereas actually in video games the largest market is Asia.
Well, yeah.
No. China, especially. China and Korea are the two big ones.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Which is also why mobile games are so huge, because those are huge in those countries. So a lot of companies are now thinking more, oh, this is going to be a worldwide product. What is the Chinese and Korean market? And actually, movies are having the same problem. Movies had a huge drop, and not just from COVID. Post-COVID, the numbers are way the hell down from where they thought they'd be.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't recovered. I don't think they will recover.
I don't think so either.
A lot of that has to do with the multiple streaming services that are out. Angie and I were just watching Madam Secretary today, and on the Peacock, or as I like to call it, the cock, and and we saw a preview for something. I was like, wow, that looks really cool. I want to watch that. Only on Apple Plus. I'm like, well, fuck you.
And here's my thing: from domestic box office, their projections for this 2028 was the farthest number I can get. That's pretty normal for economics.
Yeah,
they put the number at 31.8 billion worldwide. That is lower than most of the projections I was finding for board games by that time.
Yeah.
And even pre-COVID, the numbers were less than 12 billion. That is not a lot comparatively.
Well, you're also looking at that time before COVID in the industry, you're looking at things that are focused. You're not taking a movie like, let's say, a Marvel movie, and you're not going, American audiences will love this and this and this and this. And now they're saying, especially Marvel, oh, well, we have to change Iron Man's suit colors because this is going to go over into China. Oh, we have to change this. Yeah. We have to have a scene where we have 2 Chinese scientists talking because of China.
We have to remove Finn from the poster because black people don't do well in China.
Right, exactly, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And
Chinese audience is heavily
so
marketed towards.
Not only will that diversify everything, but now when you think that's going to boost sales ridiculously, you're actually cutting things down because now the other populations, they're all going, what the fuck is that? Yeah. Why did you do that? This is stupid.
Well, when half your sales or whatever come from there, like you have to decide pander. You have to pander or make the choice do we want to follow our artistic dream or do we want to make money?
Exactly. And as much as I love the industry and I love being an actor, that is the one thing that I'm really glad I got out of Los Angeles. I'm away from that, because you can't just do a project anymore. Yeah. You can't be like, oh, this is great, we've got a great director. Like, I couldn't go and work on something with David Lynch again and expect it to be this huge thing without all of these caveats. So you can't do this, we can't do this, and we can't do this. Yeah. It'd be like...
And I was going to say, that's the same thing. Is video games and movies are having that problem where they want it to become a worldwide phenomenon. And this always searching for the wider audience, forgetting that there isn't actually a wider audience. There is a core audience and then expanded out. That's what's killing. That's actually, if you ask me, is what killed Blizzard Activision.
Oh, not just that. Blizzard and Activision dug their own grave because of their own stupidity and greed.
Well,
let's just face they're actually one of the only companies that's making a profit, though.
That's because they went to mobile games in China. That's what they focused on.
Exactly. Like I said, greed.
But before that point is, if you look at their games, like, a golden example is what happened with Diablo. Diablo 1 and 2 were very core games.
Well, they were fantastic.
3 was a little bit wider. It lost some of that depth.
Yeah.
But it did have a large amount of sales. But then their thought process is, oh, well, we can remake, and I'm putting that in huge quotes, the second one and re-put that out there and boxed it, just completely botched it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also made Diablo Immortals a giant cash grab that was aimed at the Chinese market.
Yep.
And so rather than focusing on that core fan of these, okay, we want this dungeon crawling action RPG that's all about dropping loot, they wanted to start making it about secondary revenue streams. Mm-hmm. Like what started killing 3 before they changed it was literally a real money auction house.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about that. Then, I was like, well, I'm not buying this.
And Diablo Immortal, everything is loot boxed. And then the remake of the second one is just a giant cash grab. And now there's so little hype for 4 that it's all, well, it's not going to be dead on the vine, but it's already expecting lower sales than they were expecting.
Lower sales, but they had a beta weekend 2 weeks ago. Phenomenal. Really feels like the old school Diablo games, and it won back a lot of the fans. As long as they don't have any horrible game-breaking bugs.
They're going to put the live money auction in. We all know it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to be as necessary as it is in Immortals. You'll probably be able to play through the game without ever needing to make a microtransaction. Because this is going to be a full price $70 game.
And that's the other thing. I think the microtransactions are killing, at least for people of our age range, they're killing complete interest in the media, because I just spent my hard-earned cash to buy your stupid piece of shit game, and now you want me to pay more just so I can win?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Or the fact that, when you buy a game, and in the rare case that you buy a physical disc, there is stuff on the disc
that's
paywalled off away from you. Even though you just gave them $70, but you still don't have everything. because it's locked away.
That's ridiculous to me. What happened to the days where you could go out, buy a game, and you have the game? The game is done. And then they say, hey, by the way, we've got an expansion coming out like in a few years. And be like, dude, no, how much? Oh, half the price of the game? Yeah, I'd totally buy that.
And then there's like Marvel Avengers. Have you heard about this? This just came out like a couple days ago. It's a live service game, so that means, like, you know, you have to keep going with every season and make new purchases and everything. If you want all the skins, you have to purchase all them. Well, their last update hit. They're done supporting the game. So they're like, well, because we're done supporting the game, you're not going to get any new content. Everything is free for everyone. So all the people who dumped hundreds of dollars into this game, thousands of dollars into this game, now
I know people that have done that.
Yeah,
oh,
now everyone gets their stuff for free.
That is stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a slap in the face.
But then you can't help but kind of look at the people who did that and be like, well, what did you expect?
Why would you drop a few $100 on getting characters?
On a game that you knew would not be permanent. You know?
That, and the other one is, it's also a cost issue, is that, at least from, let's be honest, if a board game fails, a lot of those are done through Kickstarter or through small runs. Like, so if they fail, it's usually one creator is out his hard-earned money, his or her hard-earned money. And even if he has, you know, some sort of investing or funding, they're out maybe $100,000. Yeah. Maybe two.
And also, it's a lot like the movie industry, where movies have the tentpole films, you know, and then that money brings in the funds for them to make the more artistic, creative things. Same thing with board games, except they're called the evergreens. They have their evergreen titles, and once they have that, like Munchkin is a perfect evergreen, that there are a million different types of Munchkin out there. They can keep retheming it for different IPs. Doesn't matter, it's gonna sell. And they can use that money then to funnel into other experimental games, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, then oh well, you know, we still have Munchkin to fall back on. And so that's another big thing that we don't see in the video game industry a whole lot anymore.
No, not really. I mean, you get company or like Activision and Treyarch and everything. I guess not Treyarch. Is it
Treyarch Activision? They're still a thing. Yeah.
Okay, but you know, you've got the Modern Warfare. Where they've run so far out of ideas and were so disliked that they had to go back and say, what was the last really good title we did? You know what? Back to Modern Warfare. Don't get me wrong, I really like those games. I think
their Modern Warfares are
their reboots are actually really good, surprisingly. But I hate the multiplayer. I'm sorry, I can't do it.
I can actually give you a good this absolutely in practice. Square Enix is like that. They have their evergreen franchises. They have
Final Fantasy.
They have Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. Every time they make one of those and release it, it's going to make money. They have some other ones that are AA range where it's not as expensive, but they usually make a profit. And then they try to do things creatively. And a lot of times it fails because they're trying to pander to a wide audience and it falls apart. A grand example from earlier this year is Forspoken. It came out the end of January, which was not that long ago.
I don't even know about this.
Well, it gets better. There's a good reason for that.
You gotta look up the Angry Joe review.
Oh, it's
oh boy.
It's a terrible game is the point. It cost over $100 million in development money. As of a few hours ago, they had less than 200 players.
Ouch.
That's worse than Halo Infinite, which I have some things to say about.
So,
by the way, we still have to play that.
Yeah. But for a company like Square Enix, they can eat that cost because they have the next Final Fantasy coming out later this year. That being said, there was a lot of backlash on that game because rather than making this interesting style game, they were trying to push to a wide audience and were more interested in what Twitter had to say about it than what players were saying about it.
Who gives a shit about Twitter? I think social media is destroying this
Unfortunately,
country.
Video games industry is one of them, and that's the reason why there's been the politicization of video games is the other big problem.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm so surprised that the Harry Potter game is a really good game, because they ignored everything on social media.
Yep.
Good.
And there's like, we're gonna make a good game, like a really good game.
And that's what developers need to do. That's what we have here with board games. You know, it's the designers make a game that they want to play.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of the ones that we've interviewed, that's what it is. We've got this game that we wanted to play, that we thought would be fun with our friends.
Yeah.
And here's what we're doing. We think it's going to work.
Yep.
And then the games that do work, it's the same thing. Why did you make the game? Because I had this idea that I thought would be fun.
Yes.
And now you've got, you know, video games now anymore is, why'd you make the game? Well, because we wanted to make a shit ton of money.
Yep.
And we wanted to do it as quickly and lazily as possible. The easiest way we can possibly make it.
That's right.
Like, oh, go ahead.
That was going to be my point, is that if you look on social media, anytime a video game is mentioned, it's either attacking people for liking a game, attacking a game because they have the wrong whatever the topic of the day is, or whatever the complaint of the day happens to be, whatever.
Yep.
Whatever is woke.
Yeah, whatever is woke enough at that moment. Or it's, you can't go onto social media. I can't just go onto Twitter unless it's someone I know, that I know, or like that I follow. Like, okay, what did they think about this game? The idea of that doesn't exist. And so then instead you just have people, the Harry Potter game had a huge this huge anger on Twitter because J.K. Rowling is a TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist. So she
thank you. I was going to ask you what the hell that was.
It's a trans exclusionary. She's a very
transphobe. For
Not that
lack
I care.
of a better term.
I mean, I don't like her anyway. As far as I'm concerned, she doesn't have an original thought because Harry Potter is just Star Wars.
I that aside, but
well, Star Wars is just magic in space. So
I know exactly.
It's sort of like King Arthur with magic.
That's all.
Yes!
Yeah, and that's what Harry Potter is too. There's like a sword in a lake, and like she pulls a lot of mythology.
Yeah. But so my thing is
you're
like,
going to say a lot of swords out of her ass, but that would work too.
Again, I'm not a fan of Harry Potter, but my thing is that everyone that I listen to that I trust said, "Oh, this game is actually good.
Objectively good." Yeah.
Even like the ones who don't like it, we're giving it 6s and 7s out of 10, like saying, there are some issues with the game at certain points, but otherwise it's a good game. Other people are giving it glowing praises. And then you have other reviewers who are like saying, because it was the media was defending a reviewer, in the review said this is a middling game at best. I would disagree, but
whatever, that's their opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an out of 10 system, if you say a game is middling, that's 4 to 6.
Yeah.
They gave it a 1 because how dare J.K. Rowling, she get any money from this game? That was their entire argument.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they understand that J.K. Rowling is going to get only a sliver of that, while the other companies like Warner Brothers is going to get a giant chunk of that?
She's not going to get much out of this game from the start. They said that. You know where she gets a lot more money from? Anyone who goes to the theme parks.
Yeah.
Just by going into
Universal,
either of them, just by buying a ticket, a portion of that immediately goes to her. But my thing is like, the discourse around video games has become politicized more than about the game itself.
Absolutely.
Whereas board games, we don't have that problem. A board
Yet.
game, if you that was going to be my cautionary
There
tale.
are a little bit, because like board games are very white. There are a lot of white people in board games.
Yes.
It's very rare to look at, the characters in a board game and see a persona that is Asian or Kenyan or, anything that's not European or European descendant.
To our listeners out there who actually do give a giant, even the tiniest shit about what we're talking about in board games, and you like to create, take that as like a kind of nudge.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys.
And so, and when we talk about things that are woke, we say it almost sarcastically, because like, we want representation. We want that, we don't want people to feel excluded when they're playing games. We want, so we, I think everyone wants that. But when they take it and turn it into a tool for attacking something, that's where there's an issue, and that's a big thing that's been happening to video games.
Yeah.
And like we said, it hasn't happened to board gaming yet. Isaac Childress proactively did that with Frosthaven, is he got rid of the word race in, like, when it says like pick your race, it's I forget what term he uses, but he got rid of that, and he so he's been like really careful with like how to do that. And even with Gloomhaven, sure he had that term, but he had all these really interesting creatures and stuff. Like, he didn't use the standard D&D creatures and beasts and all that. He made his own thing, and everything felt very, very inclusive and very, very, very varied, and just very interesting.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you said about D&D. That's another example. Is that despite what Twitter has said, is objectively from the start, D&D is one of the most inclusive games. Like,
absolutely,
you can be whatever you want. And going into 5e from previous editions, it was even better, because in earlier editions, there was this thing where certain races would actually limit you from taking certain classes or give you certain penalties. Whereas they got rid of a lot of that stuff with 5th edition. And 5th edition, I can say, from looking at different other tabletop games, is one of the most open systems, saying, if I want to play a half-orc who is, prancing around barding all the time, I can do that. If I want to...
La-di-da-di-da, look at me, right?
Or in one of our own games, we had the halfling barbarian. Literally. Couldn't carry a great axe, had this little tiny battle axe, and was perfectly functional.
Works.
Yeah, but so my thing is like... But then Twitter started attacking them like, oh, well, it's not... Literally, someone came up with this idea that orcs are African Americans, and they're like... And everyone's
like,
attacking them for that.
And we're all just like, where did this come from?
And so people are, and that's another problem, is that people are trying to find reasons to be perpetually like offended by these longer existing franchises. And unfortunately, I would say video games are a cautionary tale, because right now I said the way the economics are growing, it's not, I don't think it's going to be as big as video games just because the numbers aren't the same, but the percentages are.
Yeah.
This is basically where board games are now, with this huge proliferation of new ideas and new concepts. Was basically where we were in high school. Like, you had some very similar feeling things. You had the first Call of Duties feeling very samey, but you also had these completely new and unique franchises coming out.
Yeah.
But so then it started growing and growing. And as it was growing, you had a core audience, and it started growing out and out. And so your sales were going through the roof, just like board games are now.
Right.
Yeah.
My thing is, I don't want, for lack of a better word, bad actors coming in and saying, trying to destroy this from within. Because that's what started happening to some video game companies.
That's right. Yeah. We don't want Tommy Wiseau coming in and saying, "Oh, hi, Mark."
Yeah, pretty much.
You're tearing me apart.
Sorry, I had to throw that out.
That voice every time.
He has a new movie coming.
He didn't get hit by a meteor yet. Just divine retribution. But my thing is like, another thing is that yes, is going back to this thing of like reviews and people talking about board games is almost done exclusively through either
it's all just podcasts or YouTube, really.
I was gonna say podcast, YouTube, or I said the word earlier and now it escapes me.
Describe it.
Like online, like forums.
Forums,
Yes. Forums or like Reddit or something like that.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Word of mouth is more, and that's how video games were. Yeah. And so long as it, in a very real sense, as long as it stays that, you're going to still see continual growth without this, invasion of like, honestly, venture capital is one of the things that killed video games as well. It's like, people that didn't have an interest in video games giving money. And that's actually what killed the first video game crash here in the US is that
in
the Ataris
84, 85
is that you had venture capital and you had people rushing in to make money on this system, creating a bubble and popping it by putting out substandard games. And
I blame Atari and specifically E.T.
Well,
E.T. was the death knell, but it was actually other games were the bigger problem.
But that's what I blame. I blame Atari because they allowed it to happen. But I blame E.T. because that game just sucked.
That's actually why, if you ever like old Nintendo games, they don't do it anymore, but they used to have the Nintendo seal
of approval. Yes, I remember those.
Yeah, and that was actually because of that. It's like this shovelware system. But And again, in a very real sense, so long as board games keep that, it will be a more sustainable growth.
Yeah, and something I wanted to touch on in terms of like why people are abandoning video games for board games. Like myself, I would any day of the week, if someone said, "Do you want to play a game?" I'd be like, "Yeah, what kind?"
Yeah.
And if they gave me the choice, I'd say board game. Like,
oh yeah,
every time. And for me, like, so some of the things that I just listed some of the reasons that that drove me out of video gaming. One, microtransactions.
Yep.
When I buy a game, I want to own the product.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And board games allow me that. Like when I get it, it's a complete box of stuff.
It's a physical copy.
It's done. It's ready to go. It's finished.
Yep.
Unless you're playing Aliens, Glorious Day in the Court.
So
then that's assembly required.
There's a new one coming, by the way.
I'm curious.
No, it's from the same company, like a
I'm
third
still curious.
part.
I was going to say, and actually video games have a good parallel to that, where the early days of DLC was like that, where you had the complete game, and then you could
expand. It was an expansion
pack, yeah.
I remember buying...
Like StarCraft
AVP.
and StarCraft Brood War.
Right,
Oh, AVP.
AVP too. AVP, you and I used to play that all the time. It was awesome. And then I went to ready? I'm going to date myself. And EB Games. You guys remember EB Games?
Yep.
And there on the shelf was...
They were called Electronics Boutique.
Oh, that's right.
Before they were EB Games.
That's right. But they had the expansion for AVP to Primal Hunt. And I was like, oh my God, how much? $20. Bam.
Yeah.
And now I get... this whole expansion, which in and of itself is it's just a different, almost completely different game that ties into the one we just had.
And now let's flip to today, where a free-to-play game like Rocket League used to, when you paid $20 for the game like me, and you could buy a car for $3 to $5. Like, I got the DeLorean for $4, I think
Did you go back in time with it yet?
Yes.
Awesome. So you hit 88 miles per hour.
Anyways, but now, because it's free to play, and it's like, part of the new generation of gamers and everything, if you want a new car, it comes with it's a car, a new paint job, and like an explosion when you make a goal, $20.
So the price of the game.
Yeah, the price of the original game when you had to pay for it.
I was going to say, that's basically Fortnite. Fortnite, despite being this huge, online game,
I despise that game.
Me too. But the actual original game was not that. There was actually, it was literally like a full play, 4-player, it was honestly kind of played like Left 4 Dead, but with building elements.
Yeah.
And they literally just created this, Battle Royale mode for it. And literally, the main game no longer exists. It's just the Battle Royale. It's free to play.
That's what they tried to do with Call of Duty as well, until... people finally spoke out against it, because that's the thing. Battle Royale games, it seems to be the popular thing right now, and I think it's another thing that's killing video games for people our age. We don't give a shit about that.
Yep. And so another thing is the move to loot boxes and gambling.
Ugh.
Yep.
And
if I wanted to gamble, guys, I'll just save my money and go to Vegas again. Okay.
Yeah. But the biggest thing I'm seeing, Halo and the EA especially do this. They remove features that were in older games, and then they will re-release them in the new game. Be like, look what we have! You remember this? Like, it's back. It's like, well, yeah, you should have had that in the first place.
Yeah, why did we lose it to begin with?
Like Halo, when the original Bungie games were out, we had Firefight, we had Invasion, we had Forge, all day one, like when the game released.
Of course, Firefight came in with ODST, which is still one of my favorite spin-off
But still,
games of all
day
time.
one when ODST was released, or when Reach came out.
Yep.
Reach was awesome. Still the
armor customization.
Yes.
Fantastic. You had all these different game modes, along with like Slayer and Team Slayer and all that. There was like Griffball, there was Fiesta, there was Race. You remember the race mode?
I remember the race mode. Yeah,
there was Oddball and Headhunter. And now they're not there. The Griffball is in Halo Infinite for maybe a couple weeks, and then they take it away. And then they bring it back a couple weeks later.
Is that to keep interest? Because you're going to lose people.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to lose people instead of keep them. But they think it's going to keep bringing people back, and they're not.
No, you're going to have a spike when you know it's back, and then you're going to have a huge drop.
Yeah.
because well, my favorite game style is gone.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'll just go to this other game that I've been trying to play.
And now, because of we let's go back to creativity for a minute, and
The bankruptcy of creativity.
Bankruptcy of creativity. Games are just made to make money now. And with Microsoft
Same with movies.
spending $69 billion to buy Activision, they are cutting and firing a lot of people. One of the places they cut was the story team of Halo. So the story DLC that was planned, they haven't announced it officially yet, but everyone's like, yeah, it's been canceled. Like there's no team left, so they might as well just come out and say they canceled the story DLC because there's no way it's going to come out now.
Okay, well, now I really don't care about playing the game.
Right.
The only time I'll play that is if I play with you online to do some of the to do the co-op. Now that it finally released,
not even split screen, which they promised after.
But they did you can hack into it to do it, which guys.
Yeah, people can hack the game and do split screen, and it works pretty much just fine. But they're like, no, it's not possible because they're lazy. They don't want to.
That while it's not a uniquely West thing, like this is why I've noticed that. Because I play a lot of games from Japan as well as from the US, especially for video games. I've noticed there's a huge difference. And I'm going to put it to this way. I love the Shin Megami series. Mm-hmm. Okay, not that long ago, Shin Megami Tensei 5 came out. And I'm going to say, story-wise, it wasn't up to 4 and 4 Apocalypse, personal opinion. But I can say this, from a player standpoint, when I got the card, put it in my Switch, played it. From the time I turned it on, there was a little bit of an update that was just like a static bug fix, which is normal, that I expect. Mm. But I could go through the entire story, and everything in that single-player game was there. All the DLC that existed was purely if you want extra demons for your squad, and each one of them has like a little bit of like, when you recruit them, there's like a short little bit there, like story bit for recruiting them. But the entire game was there. It's not like they're promising us, oh, well, there's going to be an entire zone, but you have to pay for it. Everything was there.
Yeah.
But I'm comparing that to like the most recent Western game I got. It just felt like they cut out so much.
So they can charge you for it later.
Yep.
Right. And you brought up something that also bugs the crap out of me that's, been prevalent for quite a while now, which is, here's a brand new game. Yeah, I got this game. I'm going to boot it up.
Yeah.
Why did I just load 100 gigs worth of shit only to be told, by the way, here's a bug fix that we were too lazy to actually to hold the game off for maybe like 2 more days.
15 gigs of download.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Multiplayer games are so much worse than single player games, I've noticed. Because like for the Switch, if there's a multiplayer mode, it's just like it's like 2 gigs. If it's like a single player, we had like a glitch in this story mission. It's like I'll download it.
Because it's just like a line of code they have to correct, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is focus is like video games. If you ask me where they've still succeeded, is the games that do not focus on multiplayer, just focus on a single player story. Mm-hmm. I find that they're doing a lot better.
Well, those are the best.
Yeah. Well, that's a personal thing too. But I will say that when it comes to cooperative things or like even competitive things, board games just do it better anymore because there's that. It used to be when, back when we were in high school, if we wanted to play multiplayer in a video game, we were on the couch together playing it.
Yeah.
So that's a very different experience than playing online. And I can say that, like, from my experiences, I don't like playing online games at all.
Yeah.
If I want to play multiplayer, I want to be on the couch with somebody.
Mm-hmm. And even like, because I'll play multiplayer games just so I can listen to a podcast, but when I'm in there, like playing Call of Duty, where there are hundreds of thousands of people playing every night, no one has a mic, no one's talking, there's no social aspect going on in this game, so there's no real
teamwork in the way of no coordination.
Yeah. Like for me, it's just something to do while I listen to the fun thing. The podcast is the actual fun. The video game is just something to do.
I was going to say a great example. And I agree. If Halo's a great example. Back when we were in high school, we'd have LAN parties. Yeah, we might not all be in the same room, but we'd have, you know, like 10 of us, 10, 12 of us in a house in different TVs playing Halo. You might not see the person, but you're all like friends. You're all playing together.
And after every match, you did.
Yeah.
You all got together around the table
might
or
have
whatever.
been just to call somebody a-hole for doing this or that, or to question how I kept ending up not where I was supposed to be. But we were having fun. We were talking. And now if you play online, like play Halo Online, this is a golden example. Like when I was playing that online, so I'm like, like 2 people on my team quit, so the rest just quit. And it was just me. And I'm just like, I can't do anything. And what am I going to do? Just sit here? Like, it was, and honestly, even that, like, even with like hearing people talk, like, no one was talking.
No.
And if anyone was talking, it was just to yell at each other for doing something they didn't like or agree
Right.
with.
Or trash talking.
Yeah.
Which
is fine if it's my friend. If it's some person I don't know and they're telling me I'm an asshole, be like, I want you to prove that.
I mean, I'll never say they're wrong. Like, yes, I am. That's...
I am an amazing asshole. But my point is like,
do you bleach?
Nah, I'm as natural as possible about these things. But like the LAN parties, we would trash talk each other to no end, and we would insult each other to no end. But we were all friends. It wasn't
it wasn't mean spirited.
Exactly.
It was friends just being dicks to each other.
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it did get mean spirited, like when we shot Brian in the head with 4 different sniper rifles.
They crisscrossed.
That slowed the game down so bad, and then you just saw John firing off the pistol and ping, ping, ping. Oh, come on, guys.
My favorite was still, he's got a rocket launcher. It's called a shotgun. He's got a shotgun.
I was going to say, my favorite is still like, I think it was Halo 2 was Waterworks with the giant cave. Like, here is the shotgun. You're going to just guard the flag. Okay. Someone came in, I killed them. Why am I lost? Why does it say I can pick up the flag? Hey guys, why does it say I can pick up the flag?
Where are you?
What? Where are you? I don't know. Come to the center. Where is that?
You and our friend Kevin, he could do that too. Where's Kevin, guys? Guys, I'm in their base. Get the warthog.
Mine wasn't even that because I'd pick up the flag and wander off and I had no idea where I was. At one point, it was either you or Brandon's like, where are you? And they're literally trying to shoot me to take the flag so you can get the flag.
Yeah, I never team killed, even in extreme circumstances like that.
Might have been
the
Brandon
only time I team killed was in campaign.
That's fair.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dick.
Yeah. That was another, like, and so that's another thing. It's like, the story aspect is another one. For that, like, cooperative storytelling is something that can exist in a co-op game. Like, especially split screen, especially on the couch. Like, you can actually talk and, like, you can plan things better. And board games, you can do that too. I was going to say, and even, like, tabletop RPGs do that really well.
Yeah.
How often, even on Danger and Dice, do you guys be like, what is he thinking? And you guys will, like, plan stuff out. You actually work together and think cooperatively.
Yeah. And that's something that, like, yeah, sure, D&D and all that, they've been around for generations now. But board games themselves have now started to do it.
Yeah,
we reviewed Spirit Island, which is one hell of a fucking game.
It is brutal. I love it.
But yeah, it's a cooperative game that will destroy you if you are not cooperating with each other. Yeah. And that's something that board games just could not do before.
Gloomhaven is like that too. I was going to say, Gloomhaven is basically D&D meets an actual board game, and that's why I think it is so good. And what is that? Betrayal is another great one for that. Where it's
where it tells the story, and every time you play, the story is different. Even if it's the same haunt, the story is different.
Very different. Right. And so I was gonna say that creativity is another thing. It's like right now we are in the biggest boom of creativity for board games.
Yes.
If you think back when we were in high school or grade school, you had a couple of board games. You basically had.
You had your Parker Brother and Milton Bradley things. Yep. So Risk, Monopoly,
Battleship, Life,
Mousetrap,
and probably the most out there one was probably Settlers of Catan.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, there wasn't a lot of options. It was just these, again, what they were calling like the evergreen ones, or like these ones that are always existing. Like, there's always going to be a new version of Monopoly. There's always going to be an updated Risk.
Yep.
Which are great. Well, I'm not the biggest fan of Monopoly. Huge fan of Risk.
Yep.
I like them both equally.
Well, my thing is Monopoly always comes down to who... It's not the fun kind of assholery. That's my issue with it. It's not the fun kind of assholery.
Yeah. Like,
But-
I would rather... I don't know if you've played it, maybe once. Lords of Waterdeep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a better Monopoly.
Yes. But like we're in an era right now, especially with board games, where creativity is exploding. Like, what? Now I can say this because I was actually at Target the other day, walking through the aisle where they have board games at Target. Literally, one section is all like the ones that have been around forever. Monopoly, all that kind of stuff. Uno. All on one
I
side.
appreciate that's separated
Yeah, and
from
then
the
there's like
hobby games.
And then there's like a divider where it's actually the divider for one of the aisles. And on the other side are like all these games. I was like looking at the one and I'm like, oh wait, we were just playing this one, or this is by the same creator of this other game.
Yeah.
It's become so much more creative, so much more broad. And again, as long as it's growing from a core, it'll be fine.
Yeah. And so I wanted to talk about some of the reasons why I talked about some of the reasons why I was pushed away from video games.
Yes.
So some of the reasons why I was pulled into board gaming. So we talked about some of them already. Like they can mimic video games now in a lot of ways. Through storytelling, or like with Gloomhaven, the AI. Like there's actual AI in board games now. Without a screen
rudimentary,
necessary.
but what's cool is
it's enough though.
if you follow it, it plays itself.
Yeah, it's still enough to, like, with simple imagination, like you see it, you get it,
Right.
Hounds, they're called hounds in Gloomhaven, but wolves do more damage when they are in a pack.
Yeah.
The scoundrel, Jack's character, does more damage if he can get behind someone. So things like that. But so they're they're now app-driven games, Mansions of Madness, where there are literal stand-up moments like you have in a video game where, like your heart is racing because freaking Starspawn is barreling down the hallway at you, and like with Dan and I, first time he ever played the game, he has the thing and he has to get to me, so he like tosses it to me and he gets killed by the thing. No, I got killed
by it.
As I'm tossing him the thing he needs, and then he gets out alive with the evidence, and like, it was literally one turn away from us all dying.
Yeah, it was great. You got away, but not all in one piece. You're someone in your party was left behind.
Yeah.
Or about the second time we played, when we ended up dying in the fire because the townspeople burned the friggin' building while we were still inside.
That's another thing. That's also led to a huge proliferation of board games. It's also been pseudo democratized, where the cost of a good board game is not that much different than video games now are $70 for.
Yeah.
So I mean, a good board game is like $50 or $60.
Exactly.
So
if you want like a high end luxury one that gives you all the hours a video game would, but with this amazing tactile sensation, it's only like $30 more. It's like it's a $90, $100 experience, which sounds expensive, but compared to a $70 video game, it's not that. It's the same as buying Call of Duty with the Battle Pass.
That's right.
It's the same thing, but with this luxurious tactile experience.
And I was gonna say, I mean, that another thing is board games, I've noticed, have been able to. One of the other, from back when we were in high school, or like one of these older style games that was really like huge, that was like a tabletop game, was actually like the Warhammer franchises, Warhammer 140K.
Oh yeah.
But those things are insanely expensive, where a good army could be several $100s.
Yep.
And then your friend also needs to have an army of a several $100s, whereas even like even other games that can kind of put that like you versus them kind of army versus army thing is a game of Risk. I mean, I got the Warhammer 40K, which was more expensive. It was like 50, but like a box standard one's like 30 or 40 bucks.
Yeah.
Or if you want to be on the same side, again, Gloomhaven and Frosthaven are a little bit more expensive, but nowhere near as expensive as an army in 40K.
Yeah. And there are now smaller skirmish army style games. Like, I just got Memoir 44.
Right. I am so excited to play
there's
that.
Core Space down here, which is a miniatures skirmish game.
I like that.
Yeah. And there's also Star Wars Rebellion.
Oh, we gotta play
which
that
is
again,
a
too.
huge. That one's more expensive.
massive.
It's $90 game, but it's a war game essentially. You have all the ships and all this and that. But it's also a game of hide and seek, which is something else where a lot of video games are now taking ideas from board games with especially hide and seek, hidden role games, or hidden movement games. Like there are a lot of Roblox games where like they're hide and seek games where you can like turn into a trash can and then you like just sit on a corner and like, you know, there are like 11 other people and they all turn into like random bits of the landscape, and then there's one person who's it, and they have to figure out what's a bench and what's a person pretending to be a bench. And very much a board game thing. There are a lot of board games that have that. Or there's Among Us.
Oh, yeah.
That's literally Werewolf or Mafia. You know, they took these card games that have been around for decades.
Well, not even card games. Like, see, Mafia we used to do in theater as a party game.
Yeah.
Where you were told what you did, and that was it.
Yeah, Mafia, Werewolf, like, and all these social deduction games, like, they've been around forever. But Among Us is, what, 3 years old? Something like that?
So, yeah.
It's actually a little bit older. It just
it's a little older, but like its popularity
is boomed in the last few years.
Just a couple years ago, and so it's that kind of thing where like board games are now getting to this point where video games are starting to take from them. Like Gloomhaven plays out almost identical to XCOM on Steam. The digital version of Gloomhaven feels so much like XCOM.
Speaking of which, XCOM 2, I've had it since it came out in 2015. I finally beat the son of a bitch. And that's not the expansion, it's just the regular game.
I was going to say, the other thing is, like, not just the democratization where the cost effective is the variety. Is like, modern video games, and I mean, they break into a few key areas. Either a shooter, it's either one of the more social games, or it's going to be an RPG of some stripe.
Right.
Yep.
And even within those same ones, and I play a lot of JRPGs, and a lot of them feel very samey. Whereas, you know, back in high school, there were games that I would play that I'm just like, this is chill. I enjoy it. It's just calm. Whereas other games are like really amped up and like really action packed. And board games do that a lot better nowadays, where it's just like, if I want like a really chill time, grab you and Shanna and play a game of Azul.
Yeah.
That is probably one of the most calm games.
Oh, absolutely.
If I want something more hopped up, and we're playing games like, you know, let's crack out Gloomhaven. Let's continue the adventures of the morally ambiguous scoundrel who keeps dragging your good people into horrible situations.
Yep. Or if you want something like, you know, you can get games that are like huge mental exercises where your brain hurts afterwards. Or there are things like the legacy style games where the board changes as you're playing it and will forever be changed.
Right. You lose. All right, play another game.
Yeah, playing like one of my favorite thing is Betrayal House on the Hill. One of the rooms is the what's it called? The sunken room, I believe it is.
Oh yeah.
And it's just this room that has a huge hole in it. And in Betrayal Legacy, there's a chance that you create that room.
Yep.
And you know, like, and you literally throw out this one room. You'll never see it in the game again. And you add the sunken room into your game, and like that's part of the house now. Where some people, they will never see the sunken room in Betrayal Legacy. Because they just won't trigger that event. Yeah. And that's something that video games, like some video games kind of do. Like the Witcher games are really good at blocking you out of certain content because of a choice you made.
Right.
But not too many games do that, you know, or in terms of video games, where board games, they do it all the time.
Yeah.
Gloomhaven, when you beat the campaign, they say, I'm not even close, you only have seen about a third of the game.
I was going to say, back to the whole social thing, is like, also... And you were saying like a good example is that kind of like secret, you know, things like either Werewolf or Secret Hitler, playing very similar to Among Us, that whole like social who is the bad person game.
Yeah.
Whereas Among Us, there's a certain thing of it where it's guesswork, which I hate. Whereas Seeker, Hitler, and Werewolf, you actually have to read the other people at the table. Like, there are certain parts of it that is straight down to body language.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there are some people who are just terrible liars. There are some people that are very obvious are not are not like, who they say are, or they are who they say are. And board games do that better. And as much as fun as Among Us can be, it's just that...
And something Among Us tries to do, too, is like... there's a very famous, very expensive and rare board game, Battlestar Galactica, based on the 2005 show.
Yep.
Where some people are Cylons, and the rest are humans. And just like in Among Us, but this game came out first, you break off to do jobs around the ship, and the Cylons will pretend to do the job, or sabotage the job. And then you all reconvene back.
Yep.
And then you go through to see... what happened, what actually happened there. And Dead of Winter also does that really well. Yes. Where, like you're collecting food and, raiders come and they demand some food. So you throw into this, communal pit, stuff you're going to offer to the raiders. But one person might say, oh yeah, I'm throwing in 3 cans of food. But instead they're just throwing in some rubbish and they're keeping the food for themselves. And that you can deduct based on what cards you pull out, like, oh, these cards came from the police station. Who went to the police station last round? Right. And, like, the Shut Up and Sit Down review, they're like, the one guy was a saboteur, and so he literally just followed a random innocent person around. So if someone went to the school, he went to the school after them. And then if they went to the police station, he went after them. So he could always pin the blame on them.
Yeah.
And that's something you could do with Among Us as well, as like, if someone goes to fix the engines, you could also go there and like pretend to fix the engines too.
I'll help you.
Yeah. Like, I was over there, guys. I was doing that. But you lose that, sure, you can like talk and people might be able to read your voice, but you lose that tell.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing is like, this is going to sound very odd, but quality of appearance has also changed. Like, yes, in video games we're getting closer and closer to realism, but video games always kind of crack down to the same thing. It's either hyper realism or hyper cartoony.
Right.
And whereas board games, there's such a wide variety in the appearance. Was it Everdell's the one where it's like
the forest critters in the tree? Yeah.
Yes. That is absolutely gorgeous. The one with plants is also amazingly beautiful.
Photosynthesis? Yes.
Like some of these games look absolutely gorgeous, and there's such a wide variety of appearances and like styles.
Yep. And then there are some games that just look like a spreadsheet, but they're incredibly intense and brain-burny.
Yeah. So like I said, while I don't think anytime soon video games are going to die, I think there's a drastic shift because of mistakes made about 10, 15 years ago. Unfortunately, that's the period that we're coming into in board games, and I'm hoping that board games don't make the same mistakes. Yeah. If it stays a lot more of small developers making creative games because they want to, and the companies putting them out, like, okay, we'll take a shot on this, but, we always have this game or that game that's going to keep our sales up. Right. That if this is a success, awesome, huge profit. If it breaks even, meh, it was fine. Yeah. If it's not a huge loss, we're fine.
Yeah. And that's something to talk to mention too, is like, as you said, like with technology improving, we are able to make these better looking games
for cheaper and easier.
A lot cheaper. Like people are taking old games like Hero Quest and Fireball Island up there, and there's a company, Restoration Games, they just up the artwork, give it new mechanics so it plays more like a modern game and a little more exciting and things like that, and just give the game a fresh coat of paint, essentially.
I saw that for Hero Quest, actually. Yeah.
So, like just the fact that you can use Hero Quest now, or even Mansions Madness Second Edition, like how it is no longer, unfortunately, like you require an app to play it, but they're able to like, the artwork is so much more improved, and now there's like ambient music to it, and at certain times certain events trigger, so it has just much more of a cinematic feel to it.
Right.
I was gonna say, I know there was another app-based game that we played where it was
There's let's see.
All I remember is the stories we were on an airship and someone was murdered and we had to figure out who did it.
That was
and
Mansions of Madness.
It was
that was one of the expansions. Yeah.
Okay.
But they
So it was okay.
yeah, but the same company, Fantasy Flight, they also have a Lord of the Rings game, which is app-based. There's a Star Wars game, Imperial Assault, which is not app-based, but there is an app you can get, so you can do it cooperatively, or solo.
We still have to do that.
We
one.
do. It's
We've
pretty
done
cool.
Rebellion, which is awesome, and I still think we should do it again so we could do a review
So we
on
can
it.
review it, and I want to see how the game finishes, like how it plays out all the way to the end.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah,
I
so
almost had you dick.
And then there's things like Sniper Elite, where
Right.
it's all dry erase markers and some minis on a board.
And Sonar, which is nothing but dry erase markers.
Yep.
I was
Which
gonna say
you
that-
guys probably, if you got to listen to our last review, we had a hell of a time.
Oh, it's so good.
I was gonna say, I mean, and when you think about that, that is basically that like all dry erase markers are all spreadsheets. That's basically the grandchild of Battleship. This idea of
Yeah.
guessing and you having to keep track of everything and coming up with a strategy. And so there are still these core concepts that keep popping up, but are done new and more interesting ways.
Yeah.
Because I still love Battleship. Battleship is
It's a great game.
It's a great game, and also it's one of my favorites that there's like a computer version because it's just like this is fun. It's just simple.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We just put in input coordinates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But taking that basic mechanic of searching, trying to do a grid, you upgrade that a little bit, and then you end up with Sniper Elite.
Yeah.
In a very real sense, that's basically what it. Except for it's hidden movement as opposed to static, but it's that same idea of like trying to track something down.
Yeah, that cat and mouse gameplay.
Yeah. And so, like I said, there are these like core concepts, but they're expanding them, making them more interesting and better in new ways. Whereas video games are contracting. You have a core concept. Oh, it's an RPG. They're going to feel very similar. As much as I love Dragon Quest, and I thought Dragon Quest 11 was amazing, it was not that different than, say, 8, or my favorite being 6.
Yeah.
Hand of the Heavenly Bride was 6, yeah. That thing.
What I see in a lot of video games is if it's an indie developer, you're going to get a lot better quality and a lot more diverse gameplay out of an indie developer. Right now, one of the biggest games at the moment from an indie developer is Sons of the Forest, which I have been waiting for since it was even announced, and that game is just so much fun. They've done a lot of new things that the original game, The Forest, brought in, but they've built upon what they have. The graphics look incredible, and the cooperative play is just as fun. Luckily, Jared did not scream like a little girl when he came up against a mutant or a cannibal, unlike the first time we played The Forest. But I tend to focus more on something like that, and anytime, if it's not playing with friends, you or Jared, on a game like that, you will find me in VR. Yeah. Because VR, for me, is just... It's more fun.
It's the wild, wild west. You know,
is.
It's this uncharted territory that people are experimenting with.
I have to pause for a second because I gave the wrong number. Dragon Quest V's Hand of the Heavenly Bride, because if someone actually knew it and I didn't want to get flamed for it, had the wrong number. It is 5. Still my favorite. It's the most interesting story.
But with the VR, so for example, back in the day, we used to play Elder Scrolls, Oblivion in college, and then Skyrim and all that, and like those games were good.
Yeah.
Now I've played one of my favorite games that I bought was called Blade and Sorcery. I try to play Skyrim now, and I go, oh, this kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we've got Skyrim
Skyrim
VR.
VR.
I'm going, oh, this still sucks.
Yeah.
Because I got to do stage combat and fencing and everything in college, so I know how to use a sword. I know how to, do combat. I know how to protect myself. And I play games like this, and I go, I'm going to parry, and it's a slash. No, I didn't say, no, don't. Stop. You know what? Screw this. I'm going back to that game that gives me full free reign. I'm going to go back to Blade and Sorcery.
Yeah.
The one game that I can't get enough of, still my favorite game for VR, is Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. The game is ridiculous.
It also has some of the best depictions of a lot of very unique firearms.
Yes. And you've got the modding community who just come up with the most ridiculous, either the most ridiculous things you've ever seen or some of the greatest models that you'll ever find on the internet. And these are fully functioning, 9 times out of 10, the gun that is in your hand, it works like you would expect it to in real life. And of course, they've added a bunch of things. You can get body armor to protect you and everything that does degrade over time. And that's the kind of stuff that interests me because it's also a great workout.
Yeah.
You can move around and you can bob and weave and duck and all of that. And you can't get that just by sitting down with a controller in your hand.
I was going to say, for video games, where most of the creativity is either in indies or the AA market, where it's not the one that they're putting $100 million into. It's one like, okay, here's $15 million and a small team. Come up with something interesting. And that's how you get...
Right, because you're not supposed to do a broad appeal. You're supposed to be like, hey, this game is marketed straight to you. And that's what a lot of the board games here that we have are.
And it's that same thing. It's like, while it's democratized in that it's very... And these new and interesting games are available for just about anyone, and the cost isn't that prohibitive.
And unlike a video game, like they're always gonna be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, so then my other thing is like the AA market's doing that, where it's like, okay, we want to make this game, and that we're aiming for a core audience, we're aiming for an interesting audience, we're aiming for a very specific audience, and hopefully we make our money back with extra. And that's how a lot of, especially Kickstarter board games work. Like when Gloomhaven was coming out, that was not going to be this huge thing. It was like, he was kickstarting, he wanted to make his money back and a little bit extra, and it turned out incredibly well.
Yep. And after his second run on Kickstarter, he was able to quit his job and become a full-time board game designer.
Exactly. So I mean, it is that things like I said, I think we're in what I called, to me, was always my golden days of video games, which is like the mid to late PlayStation 2 into the early PS3 era. For you guys, it'd be the Xbox,
OG Xbox to 360
into the early 360 market.
I got to go back a little bit. I got to go back to the 64, the N64 up to then. We had a lot of really good times. GoldenEye 64.
But even then, like that,
there was a lot of learning that was still going on in the video game industry.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean,
because like shooters were not.
Yeah,
a real serious force.
They also didn't know
until
how to
Halo.
Right. But
and not
GoldenEye
Halo,
set that bar. GoldenEye really laid that foundation for all of that stuff.
Yeah. But I was gonna say, if you play like the remakes of GoldenEye, you'll notice that they've actually taken what they've learned from modern shooters to make it play better.
Oh yeah, when Microsoft bought Rare, they released.
Rare Replay.
Yeah, Rare Replay, and they released GoldenEye in all its Nintendo 64 glory. Like, it plays amazing on a dual stick controller, like an Xbox controller. It's great.
Yeah. But so that's my thing, is like, so we're in what I'd consider one of my favorite times of video game. Is like, that era, that mid to late PlayStation 2 into the PS3. I know I was Sony more than Xbox.
Yep.
But that's when we had this huge burst of creativity. It's also when it started getting more and more appeal, so that way you had more and more games coming out. The unfortunate thing is that was at the same time as where you had more and more appeal, so more companies are aiming for the broad appeal and to get this wider market, which is never the good thing to chase. You want to chase your core market and expand outwards from word of mouth, and board games are doing that better right now. Yeah. And if they stick to that, I can see this growth getting to the point where, instead of being, $40 billion is the number they're going to aim for, if they do this kind of growth, we might not hit like $150 billion, but I think we'll have steadier growth long term, and it won't plateau out.
Yeah.
That like video games are trying to do, where it's not as high a growth. It's like 8 or so % is what they're expecting, which is not much.
A steady growth instead of an astronomical.
Yeah.
Even now, just looking at Kickstarter, I did the math earlier today. Of the top 15 Kickstarter projects in the history of Kickstarter, 6 of them were board games. Or something board game related. Like Wormwood Game Tables was on there.
Yep.
Isn't that the one that you just got? The game table?
No. Wormwood makes high-end, like,
Okay,
gorgeous.
Wormwood is-
thinking of the
They're like the Mercedes of wooden
I was originally looking at
products.
getting a Wormwood dice
Tray.
dice tower.
Or tower, yeah.
The tower, and I'm like,
the Mercedes.
this thing is more than my entire collection of D&D books at the time
For a dice tower.
for a dice tower. They are gorgeous. They are expensive.
Yeah.
If you want
Like a
something
tray,
I could have built something.
Like,
I
just a
have
dice tray to roll dice into is like $70.
Yeah. They are absolutely gorgeous. They're basically
Yeah.
works of art in wood.
Yeah.
But
I got so much woodworking stuff. I could really make that much money off of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
If it's good enough. Yeah.
Oh, it's good.
And so like some of the others on there were like Frosthaven, Vox Machina, because that was fun. The initial one was funded
Through Kickstarter.
Kickstarter, and then Amazon saw the first episode animated and acted, and they're like, oh, okay, and then they funded the rest of the season and all that. But for those who don't know, that's a D&D live play podcast that was turned into a TV show. But then, like, just a variety of other board games fill out the rest of that, the other 6 there. But, yeah, like, the fact that on Kickstarter, of the top 15, nearly half of them are board games right now. That's very telling.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if they keep to, like, honestly, as much as I have some issues with Kickstarter, the way they do stuff, because they do some things real sketchy, a lot of the crowdfunding, but crowdfunding, especially for a board game, is such a good idea because it's an easy way to see if you can get your core audience to want it.
Yeah.
And if they can get it funded and get it together, you have guaranteed sales where you don't have to chase venture capitalists, which are going to bring their own, if you're getting our money, we want this or that. And video games fell into that hard.
Yeah.
And again, I think unfortunately we have to see video games right now as a cautionary tale as to what could happen to board games, and I hope doesn't. Unfortunately, so many other media that has gotten more and more popular has done that.
Yep.
Comic books are another one.
It's gonna happen eventually. Like, it's just bound to. Speaking of variety, like, just looking at my wall here, I have games about haunted houses, making wine, Star Wars, zombies, horror, the horrors of Lovecraft.
Yep.
Always awesome.
And then there are games coming to Kickstarter right now of one guy trying to simulate Command and Conquer. Jason Blake with his game Seismic.
Yes, I'm so excited for that.
There's another game called Adrenaline, which feels like you're playing a first-person shooter.
Yep.
Which sounds incredible, right?
I like that.
I have Catan up here now.
Which
2 copies.
I was gonna say you've got quite a bit of Catan.
I have 2
here.
copies of Catan and 2 copies of Seafarers of Catan, and there's a
Cities and Knights of Catan.
Cities and Knights, and there's an Egyptian one up top, still in the original German.
Ooh, wow!
Yeah.
Oh, wow!
So, all kinds of crazy stuff. And then there's, like, games about hackers with Netrunner and World War II.
Yeah, you've got historical games
Such
here.
a variety. Where, with video games these days, it's like, it's a sci-fi shooter. Yeah. It's a
That
World War
and
II
also-
shooter. It's a
also-
battle royale game.
The variety of how you play is so very different. Like, some of the most fun I've had with some of the games, like Azul, such a chill game. It's just little tiles and little cardboard plates. And then you have things like
like Champions of Midgard, where it's worker placement, you know, like put a guy down, get the stuff, and then use the stuff to do
and
to do
also, like,
something.
Scythe, where it's all of that. Plus, if you get in my way, I will destroy you.
But I was gonna say also like how you play. Like I said, so you have some where it's like little cardboard and little tiles. Then you have other ones where it's miniatures on cardboard, or some where it's a lot of miniatures.
Yeah.
Or you have Barren Park, which is literally just like I love that game. It's so much. It's so much
It's
fun.
so
So
silly.
good.
It is
so silly.
It's so silly, but so fun. But it's like it's just geometric shapes. It's super Tetris, and then you have things like
Dungeon Fighter, where you're bouncing dice.
yes, or if you don't have that much space, there are so many good deck games where it's just a set of cards, like we just did. The Slay.
Here to Slay.
Here to Slay.
Yeah.
That was an amazing amount of fun. And again, it's decks of cards. It's just decks of cards.
Yeah.
Right. Right, like our Legendary series here.
Yeah.
Same thing.
That's more than decks of cards.
Okay.
That's like 1,000 cards.
Okay. Our Legendary series here, we've got the Predator films, and we got the Alien films.
Yeah.
And each box is heavy
It's
because of
heavy.
so many cards.
So, but I mean, that's the other thing is like, there's also variety in how you play.
Yeah.
And video games, there isn't much variety except for what console you use.
Right.
And VR is one huge change, and touchscreen is the other kind of.
Right.
Beyond that, it's just controller.
That's right.
And the controllers are dang near identical, like all
just
the
about.
buttons are in the same place, all the sticks are in the same place, there's bumpers and triggers, and it's the same number of buttons in the same spot. PS5 has like the touch screen on
the
it
touchpad
and everything,
in
the
the center,
touchpad.
yeah.
And PS4 had that too, but like PS5 has like a nicer one,
It has
than
it has
the PS4 one.
And also, we ignored the 6-axis from PS3. Oh god, I
God.
hate that thing.
Yeah,
I turned it off on every game.
Yeah.
Turning that off.
If Switch
idea.
could get rid of that would be
One
great.
idea. So, real quick, I just want to go back to the Legendary. We need to play a game where we mix them.
Yeah, one of these days, yeah. Come summertime. Yeah.
How about after I move? How about after I get my house
Yeah.
all situated?
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure you need the third one, which is just the Colonial Marines, and you mix them all together and see who's gonna die.
Oh, that would be so.
Oh, we already knew the Marines were going to die. That's just the way it goes.
But the Marines, there's always, Predators, the aliens are the bigger problem because there's a lot of them and they breed really fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Humans, we can outnumber the Predators and just through attrition win. It's the 40k
See,
Imperial
now
Guard
that's,
approach.
That's actually something, an idea, because like in one of the board game groups I'm in, like someone pitched the idea of like, what is an IP you would like to see as a game and how would it play? And I'm like, hear me out. An AVP game.
Mm-hmm.
If you are Predator, it's a hidden movement game.
Yes.
If you are aliens, you are just swarming the map.
Mm-hmm.
If you are humans, then it's a dungeon crawl. And so each character plays wildly different in how they move, what they roll, how they attack, and all that. And
Exactly like Rebellion did with the video game series that they picked up in 1994.
yeah, and all these people are like, I need this game right now.
Oh, the rule book. You would have 3 separate rule books.
Well, there's this one game called Root.
Mm-hmm.
It's a war game, but
Okay.
you are little forest critters. So there are the birds, and the birds, the way every single group plays differently. So the birds is a programming game. I don't have any programming games yet, but I have a couple digitally. So what you do is like, it's easier to explain it through the game Robo Rally, where you're 2 battling robots, and so you say like, I'm going to move up first, then I'm going to move left, then I'm going to move right, and then I'm going to move up again. And you program out all your actions.
Okay.
And then you have to play them in that order.
Yep.
So, but if someone like, okay, so the first card I move up, second card I move right. But, so like I move up first turn, you move up the second turn, because you have programmed your cards. And then I move right the second time. But I can't move right because you had just put a box in my way when you moved up. So I skip that. Now my next one, I move right again. I still can't move right. And then I move up. Oh, I just fell into a pit. And so, but anyway, so the birds in Root, they are programmed sequence. So that's how they play. So the bird player is doing that thing. Then there's another player who, they are strictly just like they're building buildings and the buildings generate troops and then they're throwing troops into the map. And so very much like an RTS game.
So basically, those are the mice and chipmunks.
Yeah. Then there is,
Rodents.
I think it's a raccoon. He's a vagrant. He just travels. It's just one character who just moves from space to space on the map and is like trying to sabotage people.
Oh,
and
God.
then there are lizard people who are cultists and they have their own thing. And so,
Those poor lizard people.
and so
Why is it always the lizards or like reptiles that are always like running cults?
yeah, right. But so every single
they gotta get in
person,
like a mask so they can keep body warmth and
guess.
stuff when it gets cold.
Yeah.
I blame the reptilians. It's the
reptilians.
Illuminati's trying to tell us to be aware.
yeah, so every single person has to learn a completely different game to play it, which I think is just genius, and it's something that you really don't see in video games.
No.
That you just don't. You kind like sure, there are different classes. Like in Overwatch, there are healers and there are tanks and there, but you're still like, the W key still moves forward. Like there are still some similarities where in Root, nothing is the same from one to the other except the map that you're on. So, board games have that too, like this huge variety and ability to just really make you think and think outside of the box in a way that video games just can't.
I was gonna say, it's actually a thing in video game theory especially, but in games in general is basically controlled imbalance, where the game is not by design supposed to be balanced.
Yeah.
Certain things are going to work better in certain ways.
Yeah.
Which board games can do that so much better by doing stuff like that, where you're playing, 3 different games functionally.
Yep.
Whereas the only way you can do that in video games is to basically do that, like, different classes, and especially in a multiplayer game, which doesn't work really well. No. The only time that it kind of works is when you have a game that is basically like a dungeon crawling RPG with multiple people, is that you're going to basically have different character classes that are going to play differently, which a good example of that is the first Borderlands as opposed to the later ones, because the first Borderlands, each of those 4 characters, their special abilities made them wildly different, and their skill trees made them very different.
That game was great.
I love the first.
Still my favorite.
A good example is like Brick. All his stuff is either explosive or close range. Mordecai is more leaning towards the rear range or accurate pistol fire. So lower numbers of bullets, more accurately. The Siren is all about a lot of bullets out as fast as possible, getting as much elemental effect as possible. Roland is about just being able to tank the damage and put it back out.
That's who I always played as.
But each character is very different in how they're set up and how you will build them. And together, when you play multiplayer, as the difficulty ramps up, because as you have multiple players, the actual difficulty of enemies just ramps up naturally, you have to kind of change the way you're maybe going to originally plan to set up your character to complement your other people.
Right.
And that's actually a throwback to D&D, is the party adventure system. But a lot of games can't do that. At best, you get an Overwatch, and it's like, you're more of a healer. Okay, so you're going to be healing your party, but that's about it. Or, you're going to be the one tanking, but not really doing much damage. You're just soaking up damage and making sure they don't get to your allies.
Right.
But in board games, you can have games playing completely different. Like, Betrayal is a golden example, especially come to the Haunt.
Oh, yeah.
You could, depending on the Haunt, everyone is doing a completely different thing.
Yeah.
You can whereas other games are perfectly balanced. Risk is a game that from the start is very balanced.
Everyone's doing the same things on their turn.
Yes. Just maybe in different ways.
Yeah.
But then another good example is Gloomhaven. It's again, it keeps that D&D idea, but because of those cards and how you're selecting your cards, you're playing a very different game. Like the one game we were playing, I was moving all over the board to position, and you're in one spot just hitting the person repeatedly. And I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
But it was benefiting for what I was aiming for.
Yeah.
It was like our last game of Frosthaven.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, very much.
But and that builds in a lot easier into Dungeon Fighter is a golden example, is because there's so many different ways you're playing that game. When we were playing it a lot, there were certain ones I'm this is a really great attack or an ability. I'm not going to use it because I'm terrible at that kind of throw.
Yeah.
So, there were certain throws or certain skills that I was a lot better at. Like the flick one, I was actually pretty accurate with for some reason.
Yeah, right.
I have no idea why. But that is so much easier to do in a board game because you don't have to make the game fair.
Yeah.
In a very real sense, you don't have to make it fair.
Yeah, and when you do try something like that in a video game, people don't want to play it. Right. Battlefield 3, I think it was, they had the Overlord option.
Yes.
You remember
where
that?
one person was basically like an RTS where you're trying to give orders to
Yeah,
your
one
team.
person
Yes,
had
yes,
this
yes, yes.
overhead view of the map.
I did that a few times. I loved that.
Yeah, and you could see where people were falling behind. You could like start dropping artillery there to like for them to get into some tanks and help, you know, and regain that ground.
That was a commanding position.
Yeah. And then there was the original version of Forge in Halo. I don't know if you guys ever knew about this. The original version of Forge, because Forge, as we know it, is just a map making thing.
Yeah.
The original idea for it, but they could never get it to work, was one person was a monitor for the team, and as the team accomplished objectives, earned points, got kills, it built up a currency, and then the monitor could buy things and drop in items for their team.
I remember them like showing off like a demo
Yeah.
of that initially, but they could never get it to actually work.
Yeah,
Okay, yep.
and like, I don't know if it's just because of logistics or time or a little bit of both, but that would have been just so cool to see play out, you know, in a game like that.
That would have been pretty awesome.
You know, like, you know, you're racking up kills, and then all of a sudden, like, a wave of enemies come at you, and then boom, like a turret appears in front of you because, you know, a monitor is floating right above your head.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, that's another thing. Is like, so I do think that board games as they are now are doing really well. And I think
Yes.
going back to the economics of it, is that because the profit margins are a bit odd.
Yeah, especially with shipping right now. Profit
Yeah.
margins are real slim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, outside of shipping, like the profit margins aren't as big as video games used to be. Because back in the day, I mean, it was the AAA was more akin to what we'd call a AA game now, where it's like, you know, you had a few $1 million, make a good game.
Yeah.
Now it's millions and millions and millions of dollars where you can't allow something to fail without taking a huge hit.
Right.
But like with the profit margins,
Cyberpunk.
yep, the profit margins.
I still had fun with that game.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I was gonna say with both the way games are, like board games are, is that because you have so much physical stuff you have to work on, that's going to always eat into cost. I mean, wasn't the one game basically he couldn't make it cheap enough to actually make it?
Deck sticks and
Yeah.
And that's a shame because
Which
that
is-
was one that I was really looking
forward to it.
But so there is a good chance, there's at least a small chance that, you know, this kind of outside funding won't come into, or at least not in as much force, into the board game industry.
Yeah.
Which, if that's the case, if they don't come in, you know, these investors and stuff, there's a good chance, and they keep more to investing through Kickstarter, you're going to keep this, what we're in now, for a longer period than video games had. Because we had like a golden age of like 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started going downhill rapidly.
Yeah.
And we're in the beginnings of that. And like I said, if they don't get a lot of outside investment, I think we're going to stay in that for a longer period.
Yeah.
And it'll delay the inevitability of, you know, investors and venture capital.
Yep. Yeah, we see it a little bit with I mean, I feel like every episode I knock on this company, but Simon or Come On Games, where they
Either way, guys, you need to change your name again. It sounds bad.
they abuse Kickstarter and they pump out lots of games and have stuff locked behind Kickstarter exclusives and things like that. But
Yeah.
you know, big companies are always going to exist and they're always going to do garbage like that. But
Yeah.
it's not as prevalent in board games
Yeah,
for sure.
right.
I was going to say, you have, what, 1, maybe 2 companies in board games right now that are, you know,
Yeah.
shitty. How
Yeah.
many video game companies can you name? How
Yeah.
many of them are shitty?
How many can't you name would be the easier way to do it,
Let's just look at the king. EA.
EA. Yeah.
EA Sports.
It's in the game.
I was
Oh,
going to say,
God.
about the only... no, Marvelous got shitty, so they're special. P-Cube, they don't care. They just keep getting in trouble because, you know, they keep putting as much fan service in as possible and they're getting angry. Gust is at least trying to have some fun with it, but they're getting angry because how dare they make Ryza have such thick thighs? How dare they? The holy thighs.
But yeah, let's end it on a happy note.
Yes.
It's getting late.
Yep.
So let's end this conversation on a happy note. In terms of like, what would what's your favorite type of board game, or what's your favorite game that we've played so far at this table?
That we've played or that we've reviewed?
Played. We can just go with played.
Okay. Shit.
Okay, I can actually answer this one quick because it's one of the things I can't get in video games anymore, and that's just like a really nice, chill experience. And my favorites have to be either Azul, Barren Park, or I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one where it's like the skulls, and it's where you have to like bet
Skull.
Skull. It's just
called Skull. Yeah, it used to be called Skull and Roses.
Skull and Roses. Okay,
Skull.
I was gonna say those ones I love because they're not they're competitive, but they're not hyper competitive, and they're very like relaxing.
Just something you can like have a conversation around while playing.
You can have you can have a beer or two. You can just chat, have fun, and just play.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that.
Yeah,
I'd have to say, going through, I really love. First of all, as you know, I'm a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft and all of that stuff. So I have to say, Cthulhu: Death May Die. Definitely has to be my
love
favorite,
that game.
just because of all of the stories we've read. You and I both have the complete works. And you know, every time one of these, and we even said in the podcast, every time you see one of these great old ones even mentioned, it's just pure terror. Like, things you can never comprehend. And in Death May Die, it's all about, like, every other game that has something to do is like, no, you can't let them, don't let them bring a great old one in. You're going to lose. This one is like, bring it, bitch.
Yeah.
We're going to kill him.
Let them
or
come.
Them. We're going to get him.
I mean, my absolute favorite, and it's not technically a board game, it would definitely be D&D because just all the great stories and moments we've had playing.
I agree with that, too. In terms of board game, D&D for sure.
It's a separate animal.
Yeah, but in terms of board games, like Gloomhaven, I love Gloomhaven. I love everything about that game. But lately, like, I just look at Scythe, and this warm feeling just fills me. This fuzzy feeling, like being wrapped in a blanket. Like, I just love the aesthetics of the game, the feel of the, like, just when you plop one of the mechs down on the board, it makes this good thunk sound, and like, it's just everything about that game just is so good.
Well, like, the aesthetics are pleasing, the mechanics are great and well thought out. And
Jacket, like, you wouldn't friggin', because again, that's another one where like it's intense, but you can still, like, it's like a chess game, because you know, like, you can still hold a conversation around it, and you're taking your time with it.
And this is a Stegmaier game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we were talking with Jamie about this, who is the creator of the game, and we had talked about this because all of his games have that same feel to them, where you do here are your objectives. This is how you play, but things come about naturally, so you can war in this game. But it's not something you necessarily, like PJ and I play, it's not something you necessarily like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna destroy you dick. It's something that, like, I'm going here, I've got a mech now, cool, I'm going here, dude, I need that spot, I need that resource.
Like, and so it just happens.
I'm sorry, you and I are gonna have to go to battle. But and when Jamie was talking to us about it, it's like, when you do stuff like that, there are never consequences where, like, you've lost it all and you have to build again. It's like, well, no, you can keep your stuff, but you're just no longer on that spot anymore. You got to go back to the beginning and work your way back, but you don't lose what you've already built.
Yeah.
So it's very natural and like free flowing. Everything's moving forward, which is really fun.
Yeah. All right. I think we had a good conversation. Yeah. It was pretty fun. I like it. I would like to do more of these, you know, and just have more roundtable discussions about.
But we're at a square table.
It's a rectangle.
It's a rectangle, and I'm going to throw something at your head.
We're at a box. Actually, we're in the basement because that's where they'll allow us. Else.
But yeah, as current events come up and things like that, I definitely want to cycle back. Like, I would like to do one about like IPs and games and talk about D&D at some point with the movie and other board game movies on the way and all that. And things like that. So hopefully our listeners like this as much as I like talking about it, because this was fun.
If you guys like it, go ahead, feel free to reach out to us and let us know what you think. If you think that we're just a bunch of blowhards, then okay, I'll take that.
Tell us that too. We want to hear from you regardless, you know.
Also, I just want to say thank you because I've popped up on a bunch of different podcasts other than my normal Danger and Dice. This is nice.
Yeah, right. You've been all over tonight.
Yeah, I keep just breaking in and they just don't kick me out.
Listen to my sister and brother-in-law's podcast, Liminal Unlimited. Jack makes a surprise appearance in episode 2 of our Skinwalker Ranch episodes.
I broke in and nobody kicked me out.
Yeah, he just intruded, and then suddenly he was sitting in a chair at the table with us.
Yeah. To be fair, I was there for the last half hour, and everybody knew I was there except Kyle.
Yep.
That's because we're actually trying to ignore you, but somehow you just keep, like, just make yourself known.
I mean, I was trying to throw some cans at his head, but, you know, you guys told me no. So.
But yeah, no, I would actually love to be on this more.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to get time where we can just sit here and
really
play a game. And
it really is.
Busy adults with busy jobs and responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments or any thoughts, if you agree, disagree, email us at gamesoboard@gmail.com or just visit gamesoverboard.com and there's a contact link there. You can just hit that and send us a message.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind there to be a more deep conversation either on the Facebook or in email about what people think of whether we're on the mark, whether we're off the mark, or maybe there's something we didn't think about.
For sure.
Or if you just want to say, oh, hi, Mark.
I swear to God, if Tommy Wiseau shows up in our things and starts messaging us, I'm blaming you, Dan, and you're losing a kneecap.
I don't need to lose a kneecap. I'll fully take it. With Tommy Wiseau, I'll talk with him all day if I have to.
I'm worried that his normal voice inflection is just his character.
It is.
Oh, God. If you're doing the talking then, because no.
You're tearing me apart, Lisa! Okay.
For listeners out there, watch The Room. And
or if you don't want to watch that, watch The Disaster Artist.
You need to see The Room and then watch The Disaster Artist. But just know that The Room, the first 20 minutes are weird. Real weird.
You think?
Like, once you get past the first 20 minutes, it gets hilarious. And not intentionally.
It was still a hard watch for me. I had to take breaks.
But the first 20 minutes are full of, like, all these, like, weird, like, you know, pervy sex scenes and stuff like that. And then
what is he doing? That's her belly button.
But yeah, if you can get past those scenes that are, you know, the first 15-20 minutes, then like they don't show up again for the rest of the movie. and yeah, it's just so bad it's good. And then watch The Disaster Artist of how it was made.
I was gonna say there's only so many hours in the day and so much life I have. I'm gonna go ahead and pass. I've seen enough of The Room to just pass.
Then just watch The Disaster Artist.
Yes.
All right, everyone. That'll do it for us for this week. Thanks for listening.